Round 2 of the Best in the Desert Off-Road Racing Series saw the cars and trucks make their way to the Blue Water Parker 425, presented by Jimco, and as expected, the racing was fierce. The racing got started with Wednesday's qualifying for starting positions, and the drivers put on an epic display of driving. It all got started with the 1,000 and 7,200 class, with Connor McMullen taking top spot just 2 seconds ahead of Jeff Proctor, and filling out the podium was Blaine Conrad. Next up was the 6,100 spec truck class, where Kyle Jurgensen led the way just 3 seconds ahead of Sean Kroll and third-generation racer Pierce Herbst. The final show came, the Trick Trucks and Unlimited Cars, which would see the Trick Trucks dominate the field. Trick Truck driver Kevin Thompson, teaming with Harley Lettner, would steal the show by edging out race favorite Jason Voss by a mere 0.4 of a second, who edged out another race favorites of Justin Lofton and racing star Robbie Gordon. Race 1 on Friday started with a boom as Jeff Proctor took the lead on the first lap ahead of pole starter Connor McMullen. However, it would not last long as Connor would recapture the lead on the next lap, and he would never look back until the checkered flag. Connor posted the third fastest time of the weekend and stood on the podium ahead of class rival Chase Warren. And rounding out the Class 1000 podium would be Brent Fox. Just outside of the top 10 overall finishers would see 5,000 class winner Chris Shawiers ahead of podium finishers Adam Spitz and Matt Coleman. The 7,200 class saw Randy Merritt power his Ford-built truck to the winner's circle ahead of all other rivals with room to spare. Garrett Allred powered his Jeep Speed trophy truck to the top of the podium ahead of Rob Subert and Andrew Hulse. The Trophy Lights class saw Larry Schmuser take top spot, while other podium finishers battled to the end to see Greg Bragg edge out Patrick Witt by just over 1 minute. The smaller event of the day saw Jeep Speed outlaw Rob White take the overall ahead of Jeep Speed challenger Kyle Gieselman. John Griffin would take top honors in the vintage class. Chevy Performance would see their trucks driven by Sean Berryman and Chad Hall break the top 10. Saturday at daybreak would feature the big show with the Trick Trucks, Unlimited Cars, and the 6,100 spec truck class, and racing did not disappoint. The pole position winner, Kevin Thompson, would get things started and lead until a mechanical error would see Jason Voss get into the lead midway around the first lap and never look back, eventually finding the checkered flag ahead of Tracy Graff. And rounding out the podium would be early race challenger Justin Lofton. Kyle Jurgensen would put in an outstanding drive, finishing an impressive third overall on the day and proving the 6,100 spec class is a force to be reckoned. Rounding out the podium was Ryan Hancock, just a few minutes ahead of Troy Messer. The Unlimited Car class would see Brandon Bailey bring his MAV TV supported car into the winner's circle, finishing 4th overall on the day ahead of early race leader Brian Parkhouse. And rounding out the podium was Joe David. Just another great weekend of racing. See you at the next Best in the Desert event. The 2020 VT Construction Silver State 300 presented by Polaris event kicked off with the car and truck time trials on Thursday afternoon. The 6,100 spec trucks got the qualifying started with Ray Griffith besting the field, and Troy Messer finished second in under 1 minute, with Kyle Kraft rounding out the top 3. The heavily competitive Trick Truck class would see Jason Voss take top honors, with Justin Lofton and Luke McMillan finishing a close second and third. As the first wave of racers were underway, the second wave started with the top qualifiers in the car and truck class leaving the start line. Top qualifier Jason Voss would lead the pack until a rear axle problem put him behind. From there, it was a battle between the top competitors in the Trick Truck class, with Luke McMillan finally edging out the competition by just over 3 minutes ahead of second place finisher Red Bull's Bryce Menzies. Rounding out the podium was Team Ford's Steve Olegas, just 5 seconds ahead of Monster Energy's BJ Baldwin. In the Unlimited Car class, it was Jake Johnson pouncing on the competition by just under 10 minutes. The 6,100 spec truck class would see a fierce battle for the podium, and eventual winner, Kyle Jurgensen, would have to win coming from the rear. Rounding out the podium would be Travis Williams and Troy Messer, who are locked in a serious point battle to see who will be crowned champion at the end of the year. The 1000 limited car class, as expected, was heated right to the end, with Connor McMullen taking top honors just a mere 16 seconds ahead of Brett Jeffers. And rounding out the podium was Fred Willard. The UTV Turbo class would not only see the biggest turnout, but would also provide for some serious action. The perennial favorite, No Limit Can-Am's Phil Blurton would take a second-place start, turn it into a win. S3 Power Sports Monster Energy Dustin Jones would finish just 3 minutes back, with the Polaris factory-supported team of Brandon Sims rounding out the top three. The UTV Unlimited class would not disappoint, as R&R Steel's Robert Van Beekum would take top honors, while Randy Rasheen would take the second spot on the podium, with the 2019 champion team of Mobbin Racing's Michael Issam rounding out the podium. The UTV NA Pro class would see Red Bull Factory Polaris team, driven by Seth Quintero, post the fastest time ahead of Caden Wells and Dominic Gaglione rounding out the podium. Other notable winners were Joe Jespin in the Spec Engine Unlimited car class. The Jeep Speed competitors came out in full force and saw Jeff Garzik win the 1700 class, while Gary Sigwing won the 3700 class, and Billy Bunch would take top honors in the 4700 Jeep Speed Trophy class. The Unlimited Baja class would see Chris Schwiers lead the pack to the checkers. The UTV Sportsman class would see Vanessa Isabel bring home the gold. And in the very competitive 6000 Trophy Lights class would see Larry Schmuser win with just over 17 seconds to spare. The 2020 Silver State 300 was a great success, and it was a great way to get back to racing after a long layoff. The next round in the Best in the Desert series is the Vegas to Reno, which is sure to be bigger than ever. See you there, and keep the motor revving.
Best in the Desert's 2020 season got started with the Tensor Tire Parker 250 presented by Polaris, and the racing was epic. The weekend of racing started with the UTV youth classes and saw the little guys do some serious battle in hopes of positioning themselves to win a 2020 Best in the Desert Championship sponsored by 4 Wheel Parts. The 170 stock class saw George Lamosas bring home the checkered flag, with TJ Sewers and Kendall Hawks filling out the podium respectively. The 170 modified class also saw fierce competition, with eventual winner Chase Mankin crossing the line ahead of second place Deegan Gonzalez, and rounding out the podium was Becker Chase. Perhaps the best racing of the day came in the 250 stock class between eventual winner Chaden Minder and podium finishers Travis Sally and Jack Gonzalez, as the three passed back and forth right to the finish line. The youth racing continued, with the youngsters in the big wheel classes and the 1000 production class shaped into a serious battle that eventually saw winner Ethan Groom beat out podium finishers Dallas Gonzalez and Jackson Lambert. The 570 production class saw Chase Mankin score his second win of the day ahead of second place Kendall Felker and third place Ryder Van Beekum. Finally, the 700-800 production class saw John Coltura steal the show and mount the top of the podium. The short course race had no shortage of racing, as Bo Judge brought home the overall victory in the 1000 turbo class, with Sierra Romo and Harry Heidler filling out the podium. The 1000 naturally aspirated class appeared formidable to the turbo class, as the youngster Casey Sims finished less than a minute off of the UTV turbo champ, while Jesse Nelson finished second, followed by Cameron Bookie. As the sun rose up Saturday morning, the racing began with the first event that featured the motorcycle and quad category. Jacob Argebright, no stranger to the top of the podium, took the early lead and never looked back, and brought home the overall victory, with Jeff Truelove and Hayden Hintz rounding out the top three in the Open Pro class. Other notable winners were Carl Mossberg in the over 30 Pro class, Carter Klein in the 399 Pro class, Will Heiss, over 40 Pro, Nick Robertson, Open Expert, Zachary Myers, Ironman Pro, Steve Hammock, over 30 Expert, Jacob Partridge, Ironman Expert, and Nick Lyon, Ironman Amateur, while Shania Stevens brought home the gold in the women's class. The quad class saw Aaron Simmons top the podium in the quad pro class and Stephen Carver win the quad expert class. The final event of the weekend would see the premier UTV classes battle for supremacy. coveted UTV Pro Turbo class would see Phil Burton do serious battle to the finish to win his first time in Parker just over 1 minute ahead of Austin Weiland. The next 4 finishers would finish within 1 minute of each other. Jacob Corver rounding out the top 3, and Randy Romo, Jason Murray, and Sierra Romo rounding out the top 6. The UTV Unlimited class would see Michael Isom continue his domination from last season, and Shane Redline with best William Long rounding out the podium by less than 14 seconds. The UTV Pro NA class would see Caden Wells finish ahead of Joel Bolton and racing icon Robbie Gordon, who teamed up with son Max Gordon to finish out the podium. The UTV Rally class saw James Hill finish first, and Bruce Kennedy and Justin Boehm round out the podium. All in all, it was a great start to the Best in the Desert 2020 season.